So I'll continue looking at the Revolve tool, and I've got a few other examples in this file that we can have a look at. And the first one is in the headlamp area, where you typically have some revolved surfaces for the lamps. And I've got a very simple curve here, and I've put the pivot point on the axis for local mode. And the Revolve tool works very flexibly with construction history, so you don't have to get everything right before you build. You can keep the control window open and modify things once you can see the surfaces. So this one has been spun round the local axis, but it's still in the standard X direction. But over here on this steering wheel, we don't want to revolve around a straightforward X, Y or Z. So again, I can just start by building the revolve, and then just click and drag this axis manipulator interactively to adjust its position. And if I pick the ends separately, I can move those to create the angle that I need. So if I'm a designer, I can work very interactively to get the shape I want by eye. But then if I need to be a bit more controlled, I can go back into my control window and say retain that vector. And that turns the axis into a vector entity, which is the same thing that we can create over here on the construction palette. And the construction history still works. So if I move or rotate the vector, then the revolve surface updates. And I can use the information window and specify it as either a vector direction in X, Y and Z, or a rotation, which is probably easier here. And I can tidy out or modify the angle. And that vector is something you can export out to the engineers, which can be very useful. Or it might be that you build the vector first accurately, and then use that to build the revolve. So finally, I want to look at the side glass here. And up to now, we've approximated the side surface without taking into account the technical requirements of the glass rolling down into the door surface. So to make that more feasible, I'm going to create an arc from the Keypoint Curve toolbox and curve snap it to the portion of this edge where the side glass needs to be able to roll down. And then I'm going to want to revolve that. And I'm not sure what I want yet, so I'll just put it to global to get it a bit more manageable. And I'm not going to want a full 360, so I'll just slide that down. And now it's much easier to find where the axis needs to be by moving the manipulators and watching the side glass change. But it's quite difficult to know exactly what I'm aiming for. So one thing I can do is to use the cross-section editor here on the control panel. And this takes one of the X, Y, Z directions and cuts cross-sections. And if I say global, it applies to everything. Otherwise, I can just select the objects I want to work on. So I want to go in the X direction, and it's currently cutting a section every 100 millimeters. And I can double click on that and change the step size if I need to. Now this makes it much easier to compare the two surfaces. So I can go back into construction history on the side glass and modify it until I get it flat enough and close enough to my side surface. So that's looking pretty much spot on. So what I've got here is a technically feasible side glass surface. So when I'm ready to clear the cross sections, I just hit clear in the editor. Now I've actually made a mistake here, which is I've created the surface on the metal, whereas my glass should be offset inwards. So I'm just going to retain that vector and then delete the surface. So now in my top view, I can just take that arc and do an offset. So I don't know how far, maybe 15 millimeters. So this time, when I do the revolve tool, I'll need to set the axis to being the picked vector, and then select the vector first, and then the curve. And I can adjust the sweep to being just over the size I need. And so then I can start to trim the surfaces. And I'll trim away the window void from the body side first. And then my glass isn't long enough, so I'll just use the extend tool for now to stretch the arc. So this is a bit of a shortcut now, because in a final model you'd build the front cheater and the rear glass as separate surfaces. But I'm just going to go into the side view now and turn the curves that I need for trimming on. And actually I need the side trim curves as well. So then I can do a project, and I'll do it in the view direction, and then take all these curves. And I need to be a bit careful just to get the right curves. And that will then give me the outline that I need to trim the glass. So that now gives me a technically correct glass surface, which I can use to now design the body side surface to fit to. And in the next section we'll look at creating the indent feature leading into the glass from the body side. And if you'd like to find out more about the Revolve tool, then take a look at the 2012 update movie in the resources section.